seeing anything shared.
Me either.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry about that. One of the reasons that I think that Pearland, the EDC has been successful is because really a commitment to looking at and doing strategic plans and then following those, really sincerely following those to make sure that we're performing as needed. One of the things that we recently did was actually a new strategic plan, and we're calling it the Pearland Prosperity Plan. We just completed that, had our board approval, city council approval, chambers reviewed all this information. So we are now into starting the implementation phase of our strategic plan. And as you can see here, there's 7 different areas that we'll be working in over the next several years in that regard, all the way from business formation, business development. You can see those obviously on the screen, but I think it's important to recognize that this is not just a PEDC plan, but it is also a community plan, because obviously all of these areas will touch different aspects of our community and require input, working together in that regard. So just to kind of give you some of the framework that we're looking at. Out of that plan, two broad goals really came out. And that is obviously one for economic growth and diversification. And I think that's important, obviously, so that folks that live here in Pearland have opportunities to not drive if they choose in that regard. We want to obviously find quality companies, work with the existing companies that we have here to help those also grow. So that's an important thing. And then also, obviously, I think becoming a community of choice. I think that is one of the reasons that Pearland has really grown in the last several years, is because there has been a commitment to quality of life. When you look at all the features that the city is committed to doing in terms of putting in that infrastructure. If I go back, if you see this back here, the item number 2 that we have on here is business formation and early stage growth. And that's really what Carol asked me to talk about this morning. Within that strategic initiative, there are 3 different points that we're looking at in terms of working with the community. One is, obviously we're looking at our business climate. And I think that is important, as anyone will know. When businesses come to your community or they're in your community, how does our community welcome them? How do we work with them? When there's issues, how do we deal with those? So I think that's the business climate obviously is something that is a key for us. Those are some things, obviously, I think that we will continue to address. We are working with the city on some new software that we think will be very advantageous to folks who are looking at either starting a business or doing modifications. We're in the process of doing some evaluation on that. We'll get probably have more information on that in the next month or so. The second thing, which is establish a hub for entrepreneurship. And I think this was one of the items of the strategic plan that really came out in terms of the committee meetings, the surveys, people's interest to see that type of entrepreneurial growth, where you see people are taking the chance to start a business and then eventually grow those. When you look at obviously our core businesses in Pearland, we have many different sizes. We have on this, one large end, we have folks like Kelsey, who is one of our largest employers, probably our largest employer. And then you have folks that are going to employ 1, 2, or 3. And quite honestly, we have more companies here in Pearland, and that runs the gamut. And I'm not just talking about manufacturing, but overall, that are employ 3, 4, 5 different types of folks. So this is just another way to begin augmenting. And the last thing that on there that they came up with is to look at establishing a revolving loan fund. And here again, you have to look at the EDC has specific legal things that we can utilize our funds for. And that's the reason this says for primary business growth. So we'll continue to look at that. Um, this is just kind of a summary of that additional slide, but down here at the bottom, I think you see the key things that when you look at what economic development is. Generally we look at three different approaches, obviously. Business attraction and retention being two of the keys. And then the third component obviously is going to be what we're talking about just for a few minutes, which is business formation. Uh, so that's really what you consider a three-legged stool in economic development. And that's, I think, one of the things that we're going to be focusing on over the next several years. Uh, to do that obviously requires a lot of work, a lot of commitment in that regard. And I think that's one of the things that we learned through this process is that the community is definitely interested in seeing entrepreneurship, business formation grow. To that end, one of the things that the EDC has already done is put up a page on our website which is for small businesses resources. I think that's something that we recognize and will continue to put more information on there as time goes on. It's amazing how much people are searching on the internet, looking for information. Obviously, with the COVID, I will tell you, we had a great partnership with Carol, with the SBDC, in getting information out about that. And I think that's really when we probably both realized the need for having dedicated pages on our websites. I know we have one, Carol has one now. So it really is important so that people can access that information easily. Whenever we were doing COVID, I think there for a while, every day we were actually updating our website with new information on the idle loans or the PPPs, whenever current information was coming out. So that's something that we'll continue to work and develop in that regard. What we have really engaged in now is we have the Economic Development Corporation went through a process and evaluated many different firms to assist us in doing business formation and entrepreneurship. And we set it on a firm called Business Cluster Development. And they will be starting in August. They will actually be on a later meeting this morning with our strategic steering committee on the strategic plan. But one of the things that we looked at is wholesale is, who could best assist us in developing the needed, not only the tools, but what we really need to be focusing in on in terms of how we do entrepreneurship. There's lots of different models, lots of different ways, but we really felt that we needed to have a good handle on terms of what is here currently, not only in Pearland, but the Houston area, and a little bit also our region, because all of those things will play into it. So Business Cluster Development is a company, and they're actually have a partner, Claggett Wolf and Associates, that will be doing some research for us to assist us in developing the proper model for that. And it's going to be a multi-month process. They will kick off in August and then begin, as you can see on this initial slide, the discovery phase. And that's really going to involve gathering research. They've already done a great deal about it, but gathering information about the different types of businesses here, the different types of resources, doing a lot of interviews. Obviously with Zoom, we know how the virtual world is working now. So you can see here the list of folks that we'll be interviewing. There's probably going to be 55 to 75 to 85 folks that we'll have individual interviews with in that regard to make sure that we're getting information about what's here. Obviously, we want to know the experiences of entrepreneurs. What have they encountered and what's happening, whether they're in Pearland or, one of the things that we have learned is there's many entrepreneurs in Pearland, but their business may not necessarily be here. So we need to find out what it takes for those businesses to be here. So the initial process obviously is just going through discovery process and learning about those different things. Outcomes, as you can see here, is really gets down to phase one for us, which is the initial phase that will start, and that will run from August, say, to about December, is really getting into the metrics of what we want to have, that desired outcomes. And I think that's really one of the keys, is for us to really understand the process, where we really want to have what it is. Um, all of us have different ideas, I think, of what entrepreneurship is or what a hub is. Is it a physical presence? Is it resources? Is it education? Is it workforce training, some portion of workforce training, or is it entrepreneur training? We really need to get a good handle on that and to develop those metrics, and really look at one of the things that they have here is called the minimal viable product. That really is a key item, because we really need to know what it is that we need to focus on when you look at that. I mean, so this is really doing a market assessment for the whole project, so that we have an understanding what we're going to be looking at. So it will really come out, I think, to soon, that we'll have an idea, at least the initial direction that we're going to be going for that. The second phase really then becomes taking that information and really developing the model for us to operate under, identifying the different things in terms of how we're going to operate, what type of model. If you look at the different resources that we have in Houston, you have J&J, you have the Fannin Innovation Studio. Those are all different models. When you look at entrepreneurship, you have the Canon, which is another model. We need to figure out which one would be best for Pearland, that we're going to be looking at. And once we have that, then we can actually start looking at how do we fund that. The EDC will be committing funds for that once we know it is, the best thing that we can look at developing. So it is a process, but we want to make sure that we have a clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish in terms of the entrepreneurship programs, what things we should do well, and make sure that, if there's areas that really aren't as important or, don't work, we need to, make sure we avoid those. And we will need to look at there again, is it facilities that we need, or is it just programs, getting a good understanding of that. Once we do that, obviously, then we'll begin the implementation of that once the report is done. So this is just kind of give you an idea of the timeline. Obviously, we're starting in August. That first market opportunity assessment will be done in December. Then the business model report will take a couple more months, obviously, to do that. The process that we're utilizing is we will have a steering committee, actually a fairly small committee that we'll be working with on initially, and then that committee and PEDC staff will be working with BCD during this process to gather information and pull the data together. That information will go through to the steering committee, then eventually to the overall strategic plan steering committee will receive information also. So it's going to be a process of a couple of months, but we're excited about their capability to assist us and get us down the right path in that regard. So that is my short presentation that I just threw together. If you have questions, be happy to answer those.
So Brian, this is Ann. You mentioned the other ones that are out there, the hub and some of the other ones out there in our pandemic climate today, which no one expected that, number one, and number two, for it to be going on for this long. What are you seeing? Didn't I see that actually the Canon kind of shut down for a while, or what's the status of these other ones during this time?
Well, yeah, it is an issue, obviously, and you look at some of the others that are, like J&J, they are, those people have to do their work and their research. So, you have to obviously utilize the appropriate social distancing and those type of things, to make sure people are doing what they need to do. But that's a good point, Ann. I mean, how does that affect? I mean, if you built a structure, how does all this pandemic stuff now affect it?
Yeah.
I mean, this is a learning process for us. Is a structure what we need? I don't know. Uh, you know, I think everyone, when you think of Entrepreneur Hub, I think most of us tend to go towards tangible things just because those are things that we can see and touch and feel. Uh, is that the right thing? I don't know, but we'll find out. If it is the right thing, then we'll have to incorporate that obviously into any design that we look at doing. Hopefully, by the time we finish this COVID stuff will go away. But I mean, I think it just it enforces the need for us to get a good understanding of what we need to do.
Yeah.
Because you would hate to spend a whole bunch of money and then just have resources idle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brian, this is Sircon. I know that your team's been doing a great job of obviously attracting and helping retain businesses here in the Pearland area. Can you share anything about, I guess, upcoming commercial expansions that you're seeing? I know we have some construction happening here on Kirby Drive.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else that may be coming down the pike that is at a stage where you can share?
We have several projects, that are in the works that we're working with that I can't share, unfortunately. And most of those I think, we're still seeing good activity actually. I mean, we have had projects that continue to go on in terms of the businesses are moving forward. We have had projects that we felt were going to come online and be able to make announcements that have postponed due to COVID. But we're still seeing good activity from our allies. We have submitted probably 5 or 6 proposals in the last month and a half to Greater Houston Partnership and the state of Texas for facilities. So there's still lots of activity. Obviously, we're waiting to see what's going to happen. I think a lot of people are waiting to see what's going to happen on some of these issues. We hear a lot about the potential for reshoring in terms of people looking at their supply chains, whether they're going to bring those closer. Recently, I've heard some people say it may not happen. So I think that there's a lot of things still in flux in that regard. People are trying to get a good handle on that. Obviously, if you look up and down Kirby, there's still much activity. We expect Indris Hauser's facility, which is your neighbor just to the north, Sircan, to be open probably, I think in October is when they're looking at opening that facility. So that obviously, will change things. We'll continue to work on infrastructure in those areas. You have the Ivy District, which is moving forward. They have, as part of that development, they have some apartments and townhomes. Those are now into the city for permit analysis. So that area will continue to grow in that regard. And it's just a matter of time, I think, before some of the other things start taking off.
Hey, Brian, I ventured out to the town center the other day and noticed some new building activity out there, I guess like towards the Dillard's, Barnes and Noble area. What are they doing there?
That is HCA's training facility.
Oh, that's where that is. Okay.
Yeah, that's their 40,000 square foot training facility. So, and that's a regional facility that they will be bringing in here again. This is interesting. You think about training in COVID, how, they are launching because they still have to train their folks, but, they're making a major investment into that facility so that they can bring in nurses and the appropriate people to do specific training that their facilities need. So, but yeah, that's what that facility is. And it's a great project for Pearland. For them. Once everything gets a little bit to normal, then I think we'll see some benefits off of that also. But I think that's a great project when you look at Pearland's growth. You look at the growth up and down 288 corridor. Memorial, Herman, Kelsey, HCA. I mean, that is a life science medical corridor now. And, those things are good things for Pearland.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was actually the Pearland Town Center property. I thought it was a standalone a little bit further out. So that's good to hear. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other questions for Brian?